Hello all, welcome back to Wisdom Blog. In the series of Azure AZ 900, we'll be looking at Azure governance and Azure resource deployment and management. Uh, so this is pretty theoretical, but we have to know about governance and all stuff. So we will be looking at the list of things which like governance strategy, logs, tags, Azure policy initiatives, Azure Blueprint, Azure Privacy Statement, Azure Trust Center, Access Azure Compliance Document, Azure Government, and Azure China 21 via net. So we'll be discussing about all these topics today. So first of all, Azure Logs. What is this actually? So Azure Log prevents resources from being accidentally deleted or changed. So this for safety protection. So if you try to delete, if it is lock is enabled, if you try to delete it, you will get the error. Like it will say, you can see this like a resource group is locked and cannot be deleted. So even with Azure role-based access control policy in place, there is still a risk that people with that right level of access could delete critical cloud resources. Think of a resource lock as a warning system that reminds you that a resource should not be deleted or changed. So like where can I see that? So if you go to dashboard resource groups and go to resource, you can be able to see locks, like a lock symbol with symbol there. So this is where you can find them. So how do I manage resource logs? So yeah, you can manage resource logs from the Azure portal or even PowerShell, Azure CLI, or from a resource manager template, that is ARM. So to view or delete logs in the Azure portal, you need to go to settings section of any of the resource settings pane in the Azure portal, so which I just told. So what level of locking is available? So there are a couple of types that cannot delete or read only. So means like cannot delete means authorized people can still read and modify a resource, but they cannot delete the resource without first removing the lock. So coming to read only means authorized people can read a resource, but they cannot delete or change the resources. Applying this lock is like restricting all authorized users to the permissions granted by read only in Azure RBAC, that is so next comes like how do I delete or change a logged resources? So though locking helps prevent accidental changes, you can still make changes by following a few of the steps. Like to modify a logged resource, you must first remove the lock. After you remove the lock, you can apply any action you have permissions to perform. This additional step allows the action to be taken, but it helps protect your administrators from doing something they may not be intended to do. So resource locks apply regardless of RBAC permissions. Even if you are an owner of the resource, you must still remove the lock before you can perform the blocked activity. So combine resource locks with Azure Blueprints. Can we do that? Yes. What if a cloud administrator accidentally deletes a resource lock? If the resource lock is removed, its associated resource can be changed or even deleted. To make the protection process more robust, you can combine resource locks with Azure Blueprints. Azure Blueprints enable you to define the set of standard Azure resources that your organization requires. For example, you can define a blueprint that specify that a certain resource lock must exist. Azure Blueprints can automatically replace the resource locks if that lock is removed. So next comes tags. Like we already discussed about this in our previous video, but still we'll be discussing one more time. So as you cloud, you like as your cloud usage goes, it increasingly important to stay organized. A good organization strategy helps you to understand your cloud usage and can help you to manage costs. One way to organize related sources is to place them in their own subscriptions. You can also use resource groups to manage related resources. Resources tags are another way to organize resources. Tags provide extra information or metadata about your resources. So this metadata is very much useful. So how do I manage resource tags? You may have a question. You can add, modify, or delete resource tags through PowerShell, Azure CLI, or using Azure ARMs, uh, or REST APIs, or even Azure Portal. So you can also manage tags by using Azure policies. For example, you can apply tags to a resource group, but these tags aren't automatically applied to the resource within that resource group. Inherits the same tags as its parent resource group. So whatever the tag you applied in the parent, that will be inherited to the child. You can also use Azure policy to enforce tagging rules and tagging rules and conventions. For example, you can require that certain tags to be added to new resource as they are provisioned. You can also define rules that reapply tags that have been removed. So talking about more about tags, resource tags are other ways to organize resources. Tags provide extra information or even metadata about your resources. So this metadata is useful for resource management, cost management, and optimization tags, operations management tags, security tags, governance and regulatory compliance tags, workload optimization and automation tags. So let me brief about each one of these. Like, what is resource tags, resource management tags? Like, it enables you to locate and act on resources that are associated with a specific workloads, environments, and business units and owners. So cost management and optimization tags enable you to group resources so that you can report on cost, allocate internal cost centers, track budgets, and forecast estimated costs. So operations management tags are to enable you to group resources according to how critical they are availability is to your business. This grouping helps you formulate SLAs, and an SLA is an uptime or performance guarantee between you and your users or your clients. So security tags enable you to classify data by its security levels, such as public or confidential. Governance and regulatory compliance tags enable you to identify resources that align with the governance or regulatory compliance requirements, such as ISO 27001. Tags can also be part of your standard enforcement efforts. For example, you might require that all resource be tagged with an owner or a deployment name. Last but not the least is workload optimization and automation tags can help you visualize all of your resources that participate in complex deployments. For example, you might tag a resource with its associated workload or application name and use software such as Azure DevOps to perform automated tasks on these resources. So next comes Azure policies. So Azure policies enables you to define both individual policies and groups of related policies known as initiatives. Azure policy evaluates your resource and highlights resources that aren't compliant with the policies you are created. Azure policy can also prevent a non-compliant resource for being from being created. So Azure policy comes with built-in policy and initiate definitions for storage, network, compute, security center, and monitoring. For example, if you define a policy that allows only a certain SKU, that is a stock keeping unit, size for virtual machines to be used in your environment, that policy is involved when you create a new VM, and whenever you resize existing VMs. Azure policy also evaluates and monitors all current VMs in your environment. In some cases, Azure policies can automatically remediate non-compliant resources and configurations to ensure the integrity of the state of the resources. For example, if all resources in a certain resource group should be tagged with the app name tag and a value of, for example, special orders, Azure policy will automatically reapply the tag if it was missing. So where I can find the policies, simply go to dashboard resource groups, and if you go to the resource group and policies, you will be able to see the policies there. So next comes Azure policy initiatives. An Azure policy initiative is a way of grouping related policies together. The initiative definition contains all of the policy definitions to help track your compliance state for a larger goal. For example, a Azure policy includes an initiative named Enable Monitoring in Azure Security Center. Its goal is to monitor all of the available security recommendations for all Azure resource type in Azure Security Center. Under this initiative, the following policy definitions which are included, like monitor encrypted SQL database in Security Center, monitor OS vulnerabilities in Security Center, or monitor missing endpoint protection in Security Center. So next comes Azure Blueprint. So far we have exposed several Azure features that can help implementing our governance decisions, monitor the compliance of our cloud resources, and control access, and protect critical resources from accidental deletion. What happens when your cloud environment starts to grow beyond just one subscription? How can we scale the configuration of these features, knowing they need to be enforced for resources in new subscriptions? So instead of having to configure features like Azure policy for each new subscription, with Azure Blueprints, we can define a repeatable set of governance tools and standard Azure resources that your organization requires. In this way, development teams can rapidly build and deploy new environments with the knowledge that they are building within organizational compliance, with a set of built-in components that speed up the development and deployment phases. So if you see here this picture, like using the Azure Blueprint, so we can do a lot of like compose, orchestrate, protect, empower, like we can do a lot. So we can skip the repeated works. So these are the like compliance categories in Azure. I listed few, but we have a lot more. So Microsoft Online Services build up on a common set of regularly and compliance controls. Think of control as a known good standard that you can compare your solution against to ensure security. These controls address today's regulations and adopts as regulations evolve. So you can see here, based on the global US government or industry region, these categories or compliance categories are available in Azure. So these are the few compliance like criminal justice information, like no need to read all stuff, but these are the few. So next comes what is Microsoft policy statement, what is online services term, what is the data protection addendum. Okay, so about these, like the first one is, what's the Microsoft privacy statement. So Microsoft privacy statement explains what personal data Microsoft collects, how Microsoft uses it, and for what purpose. The privacy statement covers all of the Microsoft services, websites, apps, software, servers, and devices. This list ranges from enterprise and server products to devices that you use in your home to software that students use at schools. Microsoft privacy statement also provides information that's related to specific products such as Windows and Xbox too. So, talking about the online services terms, the OST, online services terms, is a legal agreement between Microsoft and customer. The OST details the obligations by both parties with respect to the processing and security of customer data and personal data. The OST applies specially to Microsoft online services that you license through a subscription, including Azure, Dynamics 365, Office 365, and Bing Maps. So, what is data protection addendum? So, DAP, so-called DAP, further defines the data processing and security terms for online services. These terms includes compliance with law, disclosure of processed data, data security, which includes security practices and policies, data encryption, data access, customer responsibilities and compliance, and auditing. Compliance aligns with auditing. So data transfer and retention and deletion. These all come under DPA. Yeah, it's more about theory, but if you are attending AZ 900, you must know all these things. So next is Azure Trust Center. It's a tool. Azure Trust Center showcases Microsoft principles for managing data integration in the cloud and how Microsoft implements and supports security, privacy, compliance, and transparency in all Microsoft cloud products and services. The Trust Center is an important part of Microsoft Trusted Cloud initiative and provides support and resources for the legal and compliance community. So, talking about Access Azure Compliance documentation. So what is this documentation? So Azure Compliance documentation provides you with detailed documentation about legal and regulatory standards and compliance on Azure. So below are the compliance offerings across these categories. So like global, US government, financial services, health, media and manufacturing, regional. These are all additional components, additional compliance resources such as audit reports, privacy information, compliance implementations and mappings, and white papers and analysis reports. Countries and regions privacy and compliance guidelines are also included. Some resources might require you to be signed into your cloud service to access them. So next is, what is Azure Government? Azure Government is a separate instance of Microsoft Azure service. It addresses the security and compliance needs to US federal agencies, state and local governments and their solution providers. So Azure Government offers physical isolation from non-US government deployments and provides screened US personnel. So it's like a separate data center for only for US federal agencies and local governments, state governments. So not all will have the access to this, only like authorized people will have it. So you may get a question like contractors working under Azure, under government sector, does they have access? Then yeah, they do have access. If they are, though if they are recruited, means they are very much scanned with all their backend like backend security all stuff. So there would be a question on that. So talking about the Azure government services handle data that is subject to certain government regions and requirements. So these are all, I'm not going to read all this, but yeah, you may get question. So to provide the highest level of security and compliance, Azure government uses physically isolated data centers. That's what I said. So same thing it is explaining here. So Azure China 21 VNet. So simply saying, like China doesn't allow any company to invest or deploy anything in their on their land. So Microsoft also has the same problem. So they had a tie-up with the 21 VNet, and behalf of Microsoft, they will be like they will have their own data centers, and like they will be managing that. So it's a subsidiary of you can see here Beijing 21 via broadband data center. Okay, they will be tie up with Azure and Microsoft Azure, and they will be running the services and operations. So this is what simply I said. If you read all, that will be the same. So that's all for this video. I know this is theory, but if you are attending AZ 900, then you must know all this, because you will get the questions from this topic, particularly governance, all stuff. So that's all for this video, and we'll meet in next video. Thanks for watching, and please do subscribe my videos, like my channel, subscribe my channel, and for always, as always, for any queries, reach out to me on my mail ID vstudentblog@gmail.com. Thank you. Bye bye.